Welcome back to Advertising is Dead. We're talking to Karthik. Karthik, I'm happy to have you back on the show. This is like I think we've spoken on Think Fast some time back, and you came on Advertising is Dead. I feel like it's been a while, so I'm happy to kind of get you back on and jump into all the things that we speak about.
Pleasure to be here all over again. And yes, I think it's been quite a while since we spoke
Yeah.
last on advertising is dead. Yeah, probably overdue, I guess now.
So I want to first also kick off with the fact that you have a new podcast coming up, which is The
Yeah.
Advertiser's Guide to the Galaxy. I think is a great name for a podcast. Immediately caught my attention with that title. Clickbait done right is what I call it. And I also saw this post you put up on the episodes on the underwear advertising side of things and what really
Yep,
works.
yep, 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 yep.
Now, so I want to understand how you're kind of digging into stuff across the system on that, and then we'll then have a bunch of stuff beyond that talk to you about as well.
Sure. So the idea behind the show, to some extent, is a bit selfish because I don't have patience for guests like you do to invite guests
Hmm.
week after week and talk. I have zero patience for that. I can only talk about
Yeah.
myself, my own point of view. And I thought since I already blog about advertising campaigns, which go far beyond this ad is nice, that ad is bad, I hate this ad, this sucks, and etc., which is
Hmm.
generally what the level of discourse on advertising is, except when you actually speak to the ad agencies or clients in private, they will probably tell you a lot more. So I thought
Hmm.
how I, as an outsider, can probably dissect ads to the level of how movies are being dissected. And then you will
Yeah.
immediately argue saying movies are art form, advertisement is just a business, you need to sell product
Yeah.
A to audience
Yeah.
B, that's about it. But
Yeah.
there is an interesting conundrum here, which is advertising is a combination of art form and a business form, basically, because the art
Yeah.
form is something that the audience, you and I, everybody needs to suspend disbelief. For instance, an ad which has Akshay Kumar playing a doctor, we audiences clearly understand that this chap is not a doctor at all, he's an actor, but he's wearing a white coat, he's wearing the stethoscope on his neck. Why is he doing it? Because it's a script that he's enacting. That's about it. But
Yeah.
while we keep that part away from our head, saying this is a scripted element, we are still supposed to trust the ad when it says Policy Bazaar is a trustworthy brand. So
Yeah.
that we take seriously, but Akshay Kumar playing a doctor, we don't take seriously. So there is a lot going on in ads more than just movies, which are just plain scripted fun entertainment. Lot more here worth unpacking and talking about. That's exactly what I'm trying to do. Go deep behind some of the ads as an outsider and look at the narrative choices being made, basically. That's the idea.
So it's an extension. So you're basically there. A crude way of putting it, you're the Anupama Chopra of advertising now is what we will term you as, if there is
To some
to
extent,
some
yes.
extent in
Yeah.
that sense.
Yeah.
But and I think it's a great extension for what you actually been sharing online, right? And I know so many people, including me, who like look forward to what you're kind of putting out there because you don't just talk about what someone has created. You dig into what impact it's kind of created. Also compare what works and what does from a. I think the cultural nuance ones are my favorite. When I talk about, I know your pet peeve is print front page ads which are in Hindi which go down south. I know that's your pet peeve.
Yes.
I see that come
Yes.
up very often. I'm like, I know Karthik's got into one more of these.
It incidentally happened
And
today also, courtesy Flipkart, which said ab pura India karega upgrade. And the first thing I checked was the Chennai edition. Exactly
yeah.
same line, Chennai edition.
And I don't know, and maybe that's a good place to start. We would assume that in today's world that is almost a given. Why do you see that still not happening? Because would you say that our brands assuming that okay, um, everybody gets Hindi now and we'll stick
Hmm.
to that? Why create multiple versions? It can't be an oversight because it's been spoken about
Yeah.
enough now over time that it can't be an
Yeah.
oversight. So, what do you think the thought process is behind that?
To be fair, I should say that many, many, many brands have evolved to not use just Hindi and English script across all editions. It has definitely
Hmm.
changed. Today's
Yeah.
Flipkart ad is probably an anomaly. It's an exception these days, actually, because
Hmm.
earlier it
Hmm.
used to be terrible. No brand used to care. They just have one single slogan in Hindi and they
Yeah.
write it in English script, which is actually the Roman script, basically. They write it all over India. One, probably it's a cost of creatives. You just have one single creative all across India and it's just easy. Then probably it's a more of a nuanced issue, saying if you have two languages and don't have the third one, those third
Mm.
people will feel offended and all that stuff,
Yeah.
basically. But I think many brands have changed, including large brands like Big Bazaar and Reliance. They have changed and they do customization across from a state to state level. So I'm very glad that it has changed.
Yeah.
I won't probably put myself saying I made this change, etc. I'm just one of the local voices, I mean, vocal voices to say that this need not be like this. There can be other ways to look at it. But I think many brands have changed. I think it just comes down to two things. One, cost of creatives. You need to
Mm.
have more creatives you need to do, and the coordination in terms of this edition, that creative, etc. That's one. But that most brands are already familiar with. For instance, there is always an address bar below which keeps changing. But the rest
Yeah.
remains exactly same address bar, and the dealers panel remains keeps changing basically. So if you can do that, you can also do some amount of change and create new changes. So that's not a problem. The larger problem, which has probably gone away to a large extent, is most ad agencies being concentrated either in Gurgaon or South Bombay. And they
Yeah.
don't look beyond their balconies at all. They know their
Mm.
language and they think, ये तो चलेगा ना पूरा इंडिया ऑफ कोर्स हाँ ठीक है चलेगा बस हो गया that's it.
And that's actually, it's interesting you say that, right? And I remember a while back I was talking to a brand out of Bangalore, and this is about, I would say, 3-4 years ago, and they said the problem is that even if they're looking for an agency in, let's say, a Bangalore or even a Chennai, their worry is, will I get the same kind of talent
Yeah,
in these cities?
yeah,
Wouldn't I rather just get someone from a Bombay or a Delhi? And that often
correct.
leads you down this path of finding that same cluster of people. I know that's changed now. I know a lot of people have moved to Bangalore, so that's really changed, I would say, the last 2 years. But the
Correct.
worry was that, is the advertising marketing, or rather advertising talent, really as spread out as we would want it to be? Or are we still stuck in being clustered around like these two cities? Because I know Hyderabad has a whole different problem. They just
Hmm.
can't seem to find people. I know agency founders who are like, where can I find people? I'm like, I don't know how I can help you.
Correct. So I would say that's not as much a problem as even the Bombay and Gurgaon agencies being open enough and ego
Mm,
agnostic to work as partners with some of the South agencies just for the localization alone. Right now,
mm,
they're just working with freelance translators. And
yeah,
those translators literally transliterate. They don't translate the essence,
yeah,
or
yeah.
probably they're not given the freedom to translate by the Bombay agencies who hold their ideas very close, their lines very close. The problem is they can't understand once it has been translated in Tamil or Telugu, they can't understand if this is the right variant or not, because they know only Hindi and English. These
Yeah.
people know only Tamil, Telugu, and English. So there is a nice bridge which is not being bridged at all. But there are many agencies even down south which work with national agencies for translation, and all they
Mm,
ask for is trust us. We totally understand your Hindi line. We will do the
mm,
best justice in Tamil or Telugu because we know the local
yeah,
nuances better. So just trust us. All it requires is trust from that agency and the client saying, "Let's work together." That's about it.
yeah. I have to give honest confession. I think there was a period of time at Glitch, I was the only Telugu speaking person. So whenever a Telugu translation would happen, I've come to the point where we were like, I think we had 100 odd people, and a
Uh,
Telugu translation would happen, come to me. And I stopped, I would say, written Telugu in like fourth standard or fifth standard, right? Because I moved to
oh
Hindi as my
God.
second language.
Right,
So
right.
I'm writing something down. I'm calling my mother up. And I'm like, Ma, is this correct grammatically? And she would correct it. So literally at some point, I feel that my mother was on roll without being paid
Yeah.
to do Telugu translations.
But that's
Thankfully,
probably the
that's that
best way because she knows all the nuances really, really well. But
exactly.
it's not scalable. That's a problem.
Because people tend to Google, right? You'll Google what the word
Yeah.
is, and that's always the
Yeah.
classical word, which is never the colloquial word, and you'll never really get
Correct.
that nuance.
Correct.
Now,
Correct. Correct.
speaking of things that have changed, when you look at the landscape today, I know there was this period during COVID where obviously we had to adapt to how things are being created. People went like, "Okay, everything will happen in the metaverse." No one talks about the metaverse as much anymore.
Thankfully.
Everything will happen through, like, only tech-enabled stuff will happen, or production's entirely going to be animation, all that stuff. When I look at the landscape now, we're going back to, and it's not a bad thing that we're going back to the, what do you call, the classical forms of advertising, like really making well scripted films, going back to some of those practices. So do you see that as well? And what are you seeing as the good and the bad? What hasn't changed, which should have changed, and what are you seeing are things that have evolved nicely?
What hasn't changed is something that I saw in both HT and TOI today, when
Hmm.
both Flipkart and Amazon have announced their annual Diwali festive sale, which is a large sale.
Yeah.
During the last two years, those two newspapers are the most impoverished. It's almost like they've lost
Hmm.
weight out of COVID, both HT and TOI.
Hmm.
And I
Yeah.
used to weigh them pre-COVID and during COVID, some of them, and they used to be really, really lean and impoverished.
Yeah.
Today, they're
Yeah.
all really fat. They've got two front page because you need to accommodate both Amazon and Flipkart as front page.
Yeah.
So Times
Yeah.
Group is really smart. They create two front pages and sell both front pages to both the
Amazing.
clients. So it's all there. But unfortunately, the ad looks exactly same. There is exactly Amitabh Bachchan, Dhoni, and Alia Bhatt for Flipkart.
Hmm.
Amazon doesn't
Yeah.
believe in celebs in print, basically. And it looks like a really jumbled political banner with tons and tons of small faces. Intro faces, you got phones, products, this, and
Yeah.
it's a chaotic ad with 100 products in one page. And I'm sure people would be
Yeah.
interested to see them saying iska price kya hai, what is the reduced,
Yeah.
etc.
Yeah.
But there is nothing else going on at all. It's exactly the same. Even the Mintra annual sale, the
Hmm.
ad is exactly same. I mean, they've got people like Virat Kohli and his wife, but it's just exactly same. There's nothing new coming out. There is no story. It's not worth talking about. It's just a
Yeah.
functional piece of communication. So some things don't change, but I'm glad
Yeah.
that things are back to normal from the COVID times at least.
Do you do you think the festival because you brought that up, and I've often looked at it, I mean, is it good that it stays functional, or is there a need to rethink how that's presented? Because I feel the functional part is great, but the other part which you said is interesting, that if a consumer can't make out the difference between an Amazon and a Flipkart or even a Mintra when they see the ad, then how are you differentiating? I mean, is your differentiating offer only for the people who actually scan and see what the price is, or is there a way for you to evolve to saying, "No, 1 second, this looks very different from all the other sale pieces there," or are we like thinking, "No, we don't need to rethink the wheel. This wheel works."
Uh, to be sure, or to be fair, functional is not bad at all. It sells
Hmm.
goods. It moves product from A to B basically. So that's very, very, very good. What probably is being missed in the larger picture is, are they also shareable? Because these
Hmm.
days we trust each other more than mainstream media. So
Agreed.
if I tell somebody saying there's a great sale on Amazon, chances are that person would take it seriously than taking a print ad alone seriously. And when you see
Hmm.
print ads, if you just remove the logo, it looks like either Flipkart or Amazon or Reliance Geo. It's all
Yeah.
exact same because the format is exactly same. So how to make things shareable is not something that most agencies or brands are caring about, because I think they are pretty okay with the status quo right now. Functional hair, we're still
Hmm.
selling, let's not do much at all. And they also
Yeah.
look at shareability only from a digital communication point of view, because there is an
Yeah.
easy way to share, click share to share. They don't look at print ads as shareable at all, but they get shared tons on LinkedIn. People take a photo
Yeah.
and immediately share it on LinkedIn, basically. So they
Yeah.
miss the trick, but I think they will evolve at one point, I guess.
And and what are your thoughts on the fact that we went fully one side with metaverse tech, everything's going to be tech enabled and stuff like that, to now come to the point of saying no, now everything is kind of like we let's go back to what we actually always knew works, and kind of drill deep into that.
Uh, I mean, I just couldn't understand what metaverse was. It just, I mean, it was just like, I mean, it was more like Second Life coming again in a second life. But
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure at some point we will have true metaverse, maybe with 5G, 6G, where the power connections are much better, internet
Mm.
connections are much better. We may probably
Mm.
have that, and we probably need to have more immersive gear also. It's not the current
Yeah.
gear that can support true metaverse. But I don't think this is probably the right time for brands to go big on metaverse, even though many brands have already gone. I mean, brands like Coca-Cola have launched a digital version of their drink on metaverse. I have no clue why.
Yeah.
I mean, you
Yeah.
can't even consume it, you can only see it. So why
Yeah.
even bother? But I
Yeah.
think it's a shiny new thing they're trying to explore, I guess.
The other shiny new thing, which is often not shiny for especially founders, and I know you and I have had side conversations on this for a while, and this is actually one of those things I definitely wanted to pick your brain on. Is there seems to be this need for every professional, every entrepreneur, everybody at a CXO level to have a clear cut personal branding social strategy, right? And all those have to be clickbait captions. You need to have a thread there. You're getting five things I learned from, or three key insights from, and or hot takes, which is the most scary one if you ask me. And that's led to a lot of people really putting up stuff which they maybe should have thought through. Like, I mean, obviously, what happened with Shantanu from Bombay Shaving Company.
Yeah.
You had a bunch of other
Christine,
posts which have kind of
Harsh.
gone this
Ah,
way. Yes,
yeah.
exactly. And
Mm.
what do you? I mean, if you look at that entire aspect, the need to do this all the time, how much value is it actually giving versus how much is it taking away from? And on the other end, what are your thoughts on all the some seemingly very randomly thought through posts coming up these days, especially on LinkedIn and Twitter?
True. So I actually do this for a living. I actually train senior professionals on their personal brand. In fact, I'm working with a very
Mm,
large bank and about 12 senior leaders from the bank, all
mm,
45, 50 plus in their age, and really the CEO level of their various companies within the bank on how to manage their personal brand. It's not
mm,
so much about hands on managing like you outsource it to an agency, it's teaching them what it does, why they should do it, and how they should go about it. And they want to do it hands
mm,
on, they don't want to
mm,
outsource that process. Now, one of the things they ask me when I talk about why this should be done is they all assume that they have arrived in life, they are the top in their industry, they are very
mm,
well known amongst their peer set and media will immediately call them. Anything happens in the banking sector, they will be the first one to call, so they can get quoted in media very easily. It's not a big deal at all.
yeah.
And they have a static LinkedIn profile, they have just uploaded their entire CV on LinkedIn, that's about it. So
Yeah.
why should I on an ongoing basis talk about topics that affect my industry at all is a question. I would rather tell
Yeah.
people that I already know, my friends and family or industry peers offline. Why do I need to talk on a broader level? So I explained them from the very basics that you address or you communicate with three layers of people. The layer one is your family and friends, which is a
Mm,
personal layer. You don't need to communicate with them at all. You just need to live. They know who you are, basically. That's your personal brand. The next layer is the time you spend with your employees in the company, which is about 8 to 10 hours every day. You also don't need to communicate and create a brand with them. You just need to live in the organization. They know who you are. But then the part two of layer two is also industry peers, industry colleagues, and industry peers, not your company colleagues, industry colleagues,
mm,
extended industry peers. And then there is a third layer, which involves media, which involves people who may look up to you, or potential employees, potential partners, potential vendors. These are all strangers. You don't live with them for a long enough time, day after day. They
yeah.
can only name search you on Google, land up on your LinkedIn or Twitter bio, and whatever you say there, they will create their own perception. My only submission to these leaders is say things of meaning and value on these platforms, because when strangers look them up, they need to get a cohesive, neat view of who you are. If you talk about 100 different topics, there won't be a handle of who is this person really. I have no clue at all. But if you talk about few
Mm,
topics again and again and again, they would be able to easily associate saying, okay, banking and asset management, this guy seems to be the best person because almost every week he has a point of view or she has a point of view on this topic. So that's what I'm
mm,
trying to help them with. That's part one. That's literally brand definition. Pick a
yeah.
few topics and be relentlessly at those topics week after week after week. That's one. Number two is you need to be relentless at it. If you are inconsistent, your audience will also be inconsistent. This is where most of the founders get it wrong. They just have to say something every week, which is right in intent, but they take a shortcut. They say something that they know everybody would have a point of view on. That's not a way to think about it. Think of way is these are my personal brand guidelines. That is, I am a brand and these are my USPs. I will say things only on these topics, not because something is hot topic, everybody has a point of view, I will also have a point of view on it. First look at
Yeah.
whether that fits your brand or not. For instance, the Bombay Shaving Company, I don't know whether employee productivity or work is something that he wants to be known for. He's a CEO, he's known
Mm,
for business
yeah.
and running the business, selling the business very successfully, and probably to some extent, I think D2C business kind of stuff. That's the broad parameters he could have chosen for himself, but he probably ventured into another topic. That's the second part. The third is the most
Mm,
important part, which is what you say is important, but how you say is even more important. This is about framing. And this is
So
about
true.
communications 101. This is something that I hands on teach the senior people because they have left colleges long ago. So I actually tell them about framing, give them examples from Nixon, and a very simple question I ask them. For instance, if I tell you, Varun, don't think of an elephant, what will you think of?
You'll think of an elephant.
Exactly, because
Mm,
I mean, your brains are hardwired. So if you actually say 18 hours, that's a framing. People will only think
mm,
about 18 hours work. And then you can't say 18 hours is not supposed to be taken literally, but you have just written 18 hours. That's the importance of
mm,
framing. Show
yeah.
positive reinforcements and not negative reinforcements. And then don't blame
Mm,
people saying, but you understood it wrong. That's not the way at all. And most importantly, they all seem to believe that no publicity is bad publicity. That is
mm,
terrible, actually, because if you use that logic, layer short would argue the same thing. We were spoken about in every single newspaper. The government took note of our terrible, disgusting ad. See, so much publicity. That's not how
mm,
it works, right? The sentiment
yeah.
really matters.
You know, there was an interest. I mean, I remember that what he posted later on was the fact that his family. I think his parents started getting calls or posts saying your son's a slave driver, and there were a lot of
That
ex
is an
employees
overreaction, of
who
course. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and he's some ex and present employees start posting saying the culture is great, their culture is not terrible. But what I found interesting was the fact that and I asked a few people. I said, okay, if you know this person, is he like this normally? And they're like, he's a person who's super focused on what he's building,
Yeah,
and he believes that he got to kind of work hard to get things done, and
yeah,
that's what I think he meant. But again, that's nuance, right? What you said about voice tonality, I feel
yeah,
that's the most
yeah,
important thing. Is that what we don't realize is it's the same. It's a difference between a voice note and a message. A
yeah.
voice note, you get what the tonality of a person is, how they're saying something, versus a written text thing. You don't. So you have to write it differently, I feel.
It's not
And
just
so
that.
I don't think it was
There
something else
is
somebody
one
else
more
wrote. I think it's
important.
something he. Yeah, sorry.
Huh. No, no, go ahead, go ahead, go ahead. Yeah,
No, I think
finish it. I'll tell you
so
something.
when I see this, I felt like this is something he wrote himself. It wasn't something he handed over to anybody else. I think yes, he realized what the tonality difference was.
Correct. So it's not just that alone, that is a voice note versus a written note. Obviously, a voice note's
Mm.
nuances will be different from a written note, but
Yeah.
there is a fundamental difference that is missing being here, being missed here. That is, he wrote something on LinkedIn in the
Mm.
assumption that people who already know him would read that post. The
Yeah.
assumption should be the
Yeah.
opposite. People who have absolutely no clue who Shantanu is, they have no clue at all. They will just look him up for the first time in their lives. Not even
Yeah.
look at his past interviews or past opinions on the same subject. Nothing at all. They will just look him up on Twitter and LinkedIn or a Google name search, and those strangers will judge what he said based just on that post alone, which is very
Yeah.
different from his own colleagues looking at it, ex-colleagues or partners, vendors, media people who have spoken to him, his parents looking at it. They will come with a preconceived notion of their assumption and knowledge of who Shantanu is. And then
Mm.
they will probably discount a lot of stuff based on their personal knowledge about him and then read the post. Strangers
Yeah.
don't have that liberty or luxury at all. There is nothing to discount. See, read, form an opinion, which is not wrong
Yeah.
at all because they're strangers. They don't know him at all.
Yeah.
So start thinking that you are talking to thousands of strangers online. So this is something that I tell everyone on the personal brand, the coaching that I do basically. You posting on LinkedIn is not you sitting alone in your bedroom and writing something to the world. You
Yeah.
posting on LinkedIn is you on stage, really well dressed and planned, and the limelight is on you. Would you go
Yeah.
to stage without preparation? No, of course not. You will prepare for 10 days. You would probably
Mm.
try to, like talk in front of mirrors because you're addressing 1,000 people right in front of you. That's the version of you writing on LinkedIn. It's not just you
Yeah.
alone in your phone or your laptop trying to type something at all. So you need to imagine yourself on stage with the limelight on you and now start talking. If he had taken that in his head, he would never have used the 18 hours framework at all. He would have framed it very
Exactly.
differently. And the intent was very right. I mean, we all been young. We all worked very, very hard when we were young.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes stretching the time limit, stretching the clock, no sleep, and etc. But not all the time. Sometimes when there is work, we have done that, of course, and we have enjoyed that too. That's a phase,
Yeah.
basically, you can afford to do that. So there's nothing wrong, he said. But the framing made it so different that strangers would probably pick and choose what they want to like and what they want to not like, and then
Mm.
go completely outraged. He had a very valid point, but it was unfortunately framed very badly.
On the other side of the spectrum is also a lot of, and I like the fact that you said, that people posting themselves, but there's a large
Yeah.
set of people who are literally handing it over to freelancers, agencies. I also find it interesting because I feel there's an entire sector that's opened up of people who are just writing
Ghostwriters.
posts for
Yeah.
business people, yeah, for business people,
Yeah.
right? And it's literally like I've gotten so many of those messages, spoken to a lot of them because I'm generally interested to know what kind of careers are kind of shaping up. So I'm always asking, how does this work? Who do you work with, etc. And in many cases, those people are super junior, like would have almost be at an intern level, and they're just doing this on the side. So that's a tricky one. Suddenly you are at CXO level, given to someone who has no experience on this front, and that leads to extremely clickbaitish, sometimes veering upon like it seems very childish for someone who's this senior to kind of put out kind of posts. Um, but I understand the reason behind it. People might not have the time to put this up on a regular basis. So would you would you still say it's kosher to do that? And if so, what are general guidelines one someone should follow?
Absolutely, Kosha. There's nothing wrong at all. In fact, they are probably picking a tool from the PR industry. I've been in the PR industry for
Mm,
10 years.
mm,
I have actually framed answers on behalf of CEOs when media asks them
mm.
questions, and
Yeah,
we have actually sent it on email to the media. I mean, basically, the process is media sends question to the agency. The agency
exactly.
sits and talks to the CEO or CXO, asks their opinion. We frame it. We get the raw
Mm,
material in terms of their opinion. We frame it out. We articulate it
yeah,
ourselves in our own words. And
yeah,
because we are in the PR industry, we take that seniority of the person into our head and then use appropriate words. If it's probably a scientist, we use more jargony words. If it's actually a CEO or a CXO level person, we use less jargony words. So the PR industry trains you for all this,
yeah.
and we actually send that answer, and exactly what I have written on behalf of CEO appears in print, and I can tell my mom saying I wrote this, but she will say no, but you didn't write this, the name is the CEO's. So that's how it works. But
Yeah,
PR industry trains you for such nuance and the kind of work that happens.
yeah,
But the kids these days, whether in the digital agencies or those agencies who ghostwrite content, they have not gone through the rigor that PR agency puts on people basically. So they
mm,
write in any kind of tone, whatever kind of tone. So the simple way is that they need to sit with the person that they are writing on behalf of, understand the tonality of that person, understand the personality of the person, and then try to imbibe their language. This is not rocket science. This is just ghostwriting 101. You just need to
yeah,
imbibe the language and nuances of the person, what kind of words they use more often, what kind of tonality they prefer, regardless of their seniority, whatever I mean, what kind of industry they belong to also, and then
yeah,
write accordingly. But the idea, the core thought should come from the actual person. The thought can be articulated differently by an outsider who to whom that's outsourced, but the idea should still be that. That is a sustainable model. If you outsource everything, both the idea and the theme and the articulation, everything, then there is no unique personality being created. If you remove that ghostwriter, add another ghostwriter, it will be an entirely new personality being built, and people would
yeah.
see through the difference between. It will be quite glaring actually if you have been reading them again and again. It will be quite glaring. For instance, one of the new people that I started following on LinkedIn is Sunil Shetty. He just
Mm,
joined
yeah,
about a month or two
yeah. I look
ago,
forward to his posts.
but
Yeah,
he's doing extraordinarily well. He has cracked the linking LinkedIn game with meaning, not just fluffy
yeah,
content. Really
yeah.
interesting, useful,
I agree.
professional content about himself. And
Yeah,
it's a great read. Every time there is a post of him on LinkedIn, I really look forward to it. I don't know
same
whether
here.
he writes it himself or outsources it, but it is in his tone. I can literally see Anna writing these kind of stuff and
Exactly.
he
Yeah,
reading
yeah.
it basically. So I love it. And that's a great model basically.
I actually was talking to someone who I think functions the best way. They said that again, I don't know why voice notes seems to be my trend of things today. They literally send the person who works with them send them voice notes of all. So they said that I do 12 posts a month, and so I just send 12 voice notes, and those become pieces. There's a bank of photos I take from time to time, so they kind of use that photos, and that's what they put out. I think that's great because you're taking it. think about the amount of time that would take. That wouldn't take that much time
Yeah.
for someone to put together.
Correct.
And it's
Correct.
easier than to, because I think when you're sitting and writing, you try to articulate it a certain way, and that takes more
And then you
time
keep
for a lot of
changing,
people.
drafting, editing. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. So this is simple. It's like 12 voice notes. I sent like, not even in one batch. I feel in like one batch a week of sorts of like, I think a few, three, four.
But there's a problem there. There's a problem there because in voice notes, you tend to be impulsive and very
Mm,
instinctive. You just speak
mm,
what comes to your head. I, in
mm,
fact, actually strongly recommend to the people that I coach one, don't just open a LinkedIn new post and start writing there. Start writing on
yeah.
Word or Notepad and elsewhere, which you can't just click submit immediately, elsewhere.
Mm,
And then after you write a draft, read it aloud, then you would
mm.
really understand the
Well,
nuances of what kind of word you've
good
used. Are
point.
you using an extreme negative? Do you want to tone it down? Do you want to broaden the point of view that you're trying to make? Do you want to research more? Because I also look at the tonality part of it. For instance, if you want to showcase your expertise, all you have is just opinions and no numbers to back the expertise, then it will come through. So I mean, it
Yeah,
won't show through at all to the audience. So if you want to sound like an expert, add some data, and for data you need to research and quote the data basically. So you need to fix the tonality, you need to fix the framing. For that, voice notes would be a problem because you I mean the voice notes would be the equivalent
yeah,
of 18 hours while a post. You would just blurt
yeah.
out
That's
something that comes to your mind in that moment
yeah,
and then
yeah,
repent later. I would rather
yeah.
suggest you
I
write
think
it
the team
down,
member needs
take
to
a
have more
calm thing.
nuance in that case.
Exactly. The point is, remember, you are on the stage with the limelight is on you. You won't blurt out something on the stage, right? You would think through it.
Yeah,
That's the idea.
yeah. And I have a bunch more things to ask you on the broader landscape, but I know we need to go for a break. We were supposed to have gone for a break a bit back, but we'll go on for a break now. Be
Sure.
right back with Advertising is Dead.
Hello, hello, hello. It's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On Cock and Bull, Kajol, Nivedita, and Abbas joined Cyrus to discuss the Maharashtra government plans to do away with homework and why a Saudi man is being called the polygamist of the century. On The Wire Talks, Chandar Uday Singh, senior advocate of the Supreme Court, talks to Siddharth Bhatia about how delay and procrastination of courts in India have affected some of its most prominent cases. On Advertising is Dead, Varun is joined by Rishabh Sharma, head of Twitter Next India. He explains the latest India Twitter Trends report and takes us through its research process. On A Niche Thing, Anish talks to Nishant Padhyar, editor of Stuff magazine, and What Hi-Fi about the features of the recently launched iPhone 14 and 14 Pro, and asks whether iPhone users really need another update. And on Vartalab, Akash and Naveen are joined by artist Santanu Hazarika. The three of them talk about their artistic inspirations, cats, and humorous misadventures that they have had over their lives. Once again, I'd like to remind you all, don't forget to visit our merch store. It's on ivmpodcast.com. We have a link to the store. It'll take you to our partner's website, beyondfollow.com, and you can go directly beyondfollow.com/IVM. Also, do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Please do spread the word about this show or any of the other shows that you are listening to. You can do this by telling a friend, because word of mouth is helpful, or rate or review these shows wherever you're listening to them. That is also really helpful to us. And just a reminder, a number of our shows are available on YouTube as full video podcasts. Do check those out as well. And finally, we would like to thank our sponsors this week: Bumble, Volvo XC40 Recharge, Heads Up for Tails, HDFC Mutual Fund, and TransUnion Civil. Thank you so much for making this possible.
Welcome back to Advertising is Dead. We're still talking to Karthik. Karthik, there was this one post of yours, blog post, which caught my eye, which is the one on muscle memory.
Sure.
And I was looking at it. I'm like, it's so interesting that you almost fine-tuned personal branding communication and connected it to almost like a daily
Physical health.
exercise regime of
Yeah.
sorts.
Yeah.
And I found that to be a great way to look at it, because it's not just one of those things you do once in a while. It's a part of your daily process of sorts, is
Yes.
what I kind of got from it.
Yes, and I can't just reiterate this fact again and again, because most people think personal branding is a faffy exercise. It is just totally vain. You talk
Mm,
about yourself, blah blah, but it is so similar to your personal health, because at the very basic, both involve just two things: what goes in and what goes out. And
yeah,
most people miss the what goes in part, both for health and for personal branding. They look at the
yeah,
outcome only. That is, you go to the gym and work out is what they're looking at, or you write something on LinkedIn is what they look at. But the 90% effort is what goes in, which is the kind of
yeah,
food that you pick and choose to eat, so that you can manage the 10% of what goes out. and then you read more purposefully, get your content pipelines right instead of just starting on a Google search saying "Aarchya padna hai mujhe," etc. So get the pipelines, get the right thing coming to you specifically, because we are overloaded with stuff. We just don't know what
Yeah.
to do when we open a laptop or a phone. It needs to be purposeful. Otherwise, it's very easy to waste half an hour where you actually start your intent with something to do purposefully, but it will just go all over the place and you will keep on
Yeah.
scrolling up, 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 up. You won't click on anything at all because it's just dopamine. It's just
Yeah.
fun stuff, meme, gif. That's it. And I mean, after about half an hour, you'd wonder where did half an hour go. So that's
Where
the
did you
basic
start? Also, you
idea.
forget sometimes.
Exactly, complete. In fact, you would have something very specific to do, but after half an hour, you would realize you have not gone into that at all. It's a rabbit hole, basically. So it is exactly like personal health. Personal brand is exactly like that. You just need to understand that what goes in part is the 90% effort. What goes out part is just the 10% effort, unfortunately.
And moving back onto the brand side, especially, I find that this period of time is the most unique one because I feel that there was a certain way communications, advertising, consumers behaved pre-COVID. Now, I think it's safe to say we're at the end of, or we're beyond that stretch. Hopefully, I will not say it. Actually, I should take that back. Take that back. We
Yeah.
are. We seem like we are in a different space. Is how I will leave it. Um, are you when you look at this environment right now where consumers are going back to stores, it's gone from a primarily D2C world to now seeing no, it's a lot more in store is really driving things. I mean, not just in India, right, across the globe, in store has suddenly become a focus. Omni-channel is back in that sense. So when you look at the brands landscape today in terms of how they're communicating, what they're kind of doing, what are you seeing as practices that are going really well? Um, and what are you seeing, especially sectors wise, who really start to get this really well, have learned from this period, kind of evolved? And what would those be?
Uh, One thing would be that we spoke about the new normal in, say,
Hmm.
late 2020 and all over 2021. There was
Oh
the
man,
new normal. Everybody was talking
the
about it. It
new
was even
normal
called
was my
normal.
like I
Yeah.
hate it. I hate that
It
those
was
two
even called
words.
normal at some point. Somebody
Normal, oh
combined
my
both and
god.
called it normal. Yeah. But I think there
Can
is
I do a
there is
brief aside and say normal might be my most hated combined word, rather than mad tech, which is that combination of mark tech and ad tech. Someone said, "What is your thought
yeah.
on mad tech?" And I'm like, "What is mad tech now?" I said, "It's mark tech and ad tech coming together." And I'm like, "Can we just stop doing this, guys? Like, can we just
More
like?"
than that,
But
my
anyway,
most
sorry.
hated is actually called phygital, physical plus digital. I
Oh my
hate
god, yes.
phygital. I don't know what even it means. Is it with a J or a G? I have no idea, but
Oh
that's there. But
yeah.
I mean, unfortunately or fortunately or even ironically, some of the new normals facets have stayed on for good and for
Mm,
better, actually, basically. For instance, much of the work that I do involves online calls. Before the pandemic, I used to be terribly scared of online calls for no reason, because I used to be only
mm,
Skype at that point. I
yeah.
never used to have my camera on at all. Now the default is for any calls, I have my camera on. I don't bother about what's
Yeah.
in the background, nothing at all. I just have the camera on.
Yeah.
And these days, a meeting means not at Starbucks. Meeting means on Google Meet or Zoom call or a team meeting.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what a
Yeah.
meeting really means. You need to
Mm,
specify it's an offline meeting, face to face, offline. This is also
exactly.
face to face. You need to mention
Yeah.
offline physical meeting. Earlier, it used to be
Mm,
different. A meeting means offline meeting by default. Google Meet, who
correct.
calls on Google Meet? That's a good thing.
Yeah.
Even schooling to some extent, there is some awareness and evolution saying it can be done online. Obviously, there is a whole swaths of people who are very disadvantaged, who can't do, I mean, who can't have high internet connections to manage school. But it's gradually moving the way meetings are moving also. And it's also
Mm,
very
mm,
eco-friendly. Far better to meet online than take a flight
yeah.
and go to Bombay for one meeting and come back. It's completely pointless and
100%.
ridiculous waste of time. So
Yeah.
those are good. But I think even the D2C that you spoke about, I think people have evolved to understand that D2C need not scale up the Walmart level and Flipkart level overnight. It's a good
Yeah.
starting point. You can start a small product for a long tail kind of customers. In the long tail, one small part, you can actually sustain that as a business for some period. Try more things, try interesting newer smaller thing like a small business, and then probably sell it or probably expand it. There are many brands that are actually doing it quite well. You can choose when you want to go offline distribution as a model. Till then, you can do D2C, because I buy a lot of D2C products which are also available offline. It's just not available in my state. For instance, the cooking oil that we buy is from Chennai. It's actually from Kaliswari brand, and it's not
Hmm.
available on the stores nearby or on Amazon or Big Basket in Karnataka. So I order
Hmm.
online. It comes the next day, and it just comes
Hmm.
very, very smoothly. I just need to
Yeah.
plan ahead and order. In fact, the soaps that I buy, it's from Kerala. It's a brand called it's called Dhatri,
Hmm.
Dhatry. It's actually one
Hmm.
Ayurvedic company from Kerala. I really love their soaps and shampoos and whatever it is. I buy them online. It just comes in the next day or the day after next. Basically, I just
Hmm.
need to plan ahead and buy it. It's just not
Hmm.
available here in Karnataka.
Yeah.
But that's not stopping anybody at all. You can still have an online store. You can sell online. So I think people have evolved to understand that digital works. It really works. It need not work the Walmart, Flipkart, Amazon level in terms of scale, but small is
Yeah.
also good. You can still continue doing small good products for a small set of audiences. I think that stays quite well, actually.
And like I buy my pickles online because I'm a good Andhra boy, and I'm like, you can't
Mm.
find Andhra pickles unless I got it from home. And then suddenly, during the
Correct.
late pandemic, found this one company who sell like properly packaged stuff from off Amazon, and they come in like a couple of days. And I'm like, I'm looking forward to that, because generally like not the factory manufactured kind you can make out from the taste. And I agree with that. And I feel for that category of brand, like you're not trying to be that 100,000 crore brand.
No.
You're a small and medium sized business. It's the best thing that's happened to them is they've suddenly found this level of consumer reach. Consumers have
Yeah.
found them,
Yeah.
and you're suddenly seeing people sampling the non broader mainstream brands a lot more.
Yep.
And
Yep.
really seeing,
Yep.
I would say that it's also broken this barrier for people above a certain age. I feel
Mm.
younger folk are still kind of doing this stuff, but I would
Mm.
say I'm seeing more and more people who actually I would feel actually, in many ways have more spending capacity, because as you get
Yeah.
older, in many cases you have more spend, have actually gone towards this form of purchasing, and now they just get to choose rather than having to say it's one or the other. But I think we went from one side to the other side, and now we're saying we can just choose.
Absolutely. In fact, a lot of things. I mean, now just you mentioned pickles. I also order pickles from Chennai. It's not local here,
Mm.
basically. It's actually a brand called
Yeah.
777. That's what I
Mm.
order. And it's fantastic. And it
You've
just
really
arrives the
mapped this
next day.
area out. I can see this. You have really
Totally.
mapped out
Totally.
the local brand arena across the south,
Totally.
and across the
Totally.
board.
Absolutely. I mean, I buy a lot of stuff from Tamil Nadu and Delhi and etc., which is just not available physically the near stores where I live in Bangalore,
Yeah.
basically. So it's perfectly fine. It works. And these are not very large brands. These are small brands. Some of them can afford offline distribution. Many of them cannot. And it's perfectly fine as long as I can find them, order them, sample them, get them. It really doesn't stop anybody at all.
Do you feel um and there was this chat about stores are dead and stores aren't going to be needed in the future, and that's totally been debunked, right? You have a lot more
Yeah.
stores kind of coming up. I know some brands who have literally said we're only doing stores now, which I find super
Yep.
interesting.
Yep.
But do you feel the store experience now has changed, or at least what people look forward to when they go to a store? Like same way you talk about cinema, the same way the cinema experience has fully like changed. Who goes to a theater for what and what kind of movie? Do you feel the store thing has changed as well?
Not much actually, because I generally go to my nearby MK Retail here, which is one of the chain stores in Bangalore, which is
Hmm.
all over the place in Bangalore. You have that, and the way I get to see new products or sample new products, it just won't happen on an Amazon or a Flipkart at all. No store at
Hmm.
all. It's just shelf. I mean, it actually gives you the comfort of a newspaper being consumed in terms of news. There is a
Hmm.
sequence, there is an order that you go in. You don't need to
Yeah.
go from one part of the store to another part of the store, or this one or that one, which is what hyperlinks make you do online. It's just
Yeah.
chaotic. You just keep going back and forth and front page, back page, etc. You just walk by, look at everything, take in everything, observe everything. You don't need to buy everything. You're just aware of what's there in the industry. Exactly like a newspaper. You're just aware of what happened in the last 24 hours, page after page after page after page. Simple. That is very familiar and comfortable to a lot of people. You don't need to redo that completely. Both can exist. The online version, which is chaotic, hyperlinked, you go from here to here, can exist along with that comfort level of a newspaper, which is an offline store, grocery store. But I seem to be actually something like finding new things worth buying or sampling in the offline mode better than this one,
Hmm.
because the in this one they use some cues to reach me. For instance, they look at something that I buy, which is on a, I mean, like a very premium scale. And then a coffee, which is a very premium coffee, like the Sleepy Owl, actually gets me in terms of ads on Instagram. I'm not
Yeah.
a Sleepy Owl customer. I'm a Kothas coffee customer, which is the lowest level when you compare it to a Sleepy Owl, which is super premium kind of
Yeah.
coffee. So they make those kind of mistakes. It is exactly like what YouTube makes a mistake. You watch a video in
Yeah.
absolute horror for about 5 minutes, saying, "What the hell is going on?" And YouTube understands, saying, "I love that video because I watched it for 5 minutes." There is no sentiment involved at all that they can understand from it at all. But offline, these people know me really well. MK Retail knows me really, really well. Whatever I pick, they seem to understand what I like, what I don't like, and everything works quite well. So both can, I think it can coexist quite well, I guess.
Speaking of videos, I saw your post recently on the Casio calculator ad, and I saw that ad, and it took me a while to really think about what was this person thinking when they came up with this idea. It was, I mean, you have to give them credit. I would not have
Absolutely.
expected that for a
Yeah,
calculator ad. It certainly got my attention if the attention was a
totally.
requirement.
Correct.
But yeah, I think you have a lot of those going around as well lately.
No, it's okay. I mean, I really won't blame that ad at all. It was quite funny. I mean,
Yeah,
as I always love saying, the worst ads are the ones where you don't even have an opinion and you just ignore
true,
them. You
true.
overlook and ignore them. This
Yeah,
is not in that spectrum. This made me take note and write something about it, whether it's for the right or
mm,
wrong reasons. It made me think. But of course, brands don't want to aim for the wrong reasons. As much as possible, they aim for the right reasons. But again, as I saw the comments for the post on LinkedIn, many people argued saying kids would probably love this because it's like their thinking. And I mean, of course, I can obviously disagree with that, saying, I mean, like, you don't need to undermine the intelligence of the kids these days. They are
yeah,
far smarter than the 40-year-olds, actually. So you don't need to think this is how they make connections and this is how they understand the value of a calculator. To be fair, it's very difficult to sell a calculator these days because people will ask, "What is a calculator? Is it an app on your phone?"
yeah,
It's really an app
yeah.
on your phone. It's not a standalone calculator
Exactly.
at all.
Yeah,
But just imagine, the kids are not allowed to take the phone in an exam room. They are allowed to take a calculator in an exam room.
yeah,
And
yeah,
there is an interesting story worth telling. But
yeah,
these people chose a very different, more funny story, which is probably more shareable,
yeah,
I guess, in their opinion.
yeah. I had a few like towards the fag end of this episode. I have a few almost quick fire ones to ask you, saying, should people use the word thought leader in their LinkedIn descriptions?
Not at all. Not at all. Along with the word expert and thought leader, please stop using it. If you're a thought leader, it will show. You don't need to say that you're a thought leader.
Thank you for saying that. It has been a point like, and somebody's get asked, right, are you a thought leader? I'm like, I don't really ask someone
No.
this question. I'm like, please don't
I
never
won't
put
even
me
use
in
the
that
word
category.
influencer for myself. I'm not an
Oh my
influencer.
god.
I'm just sharing my views. That's it. I don't have a
Yeah.
rate card. I have only a GST card and a PAN card. That's it. Nothing else.
Do you have any don't do's for brands and even individuals who are communicating today in the landscape, saying please don't do this anymore? Would you have any of those?
Nothing. I think they should go out and experiment on any and everything. I mean, many of the newer brands don't think much about TVCs and print ads. I would say
Mm,
try them both because there is still a
mm,
big audience in India for print. There is still TV. Of course, TV is morphing into OTT TV, not
mm,
just conventional or satellite TV. That's a problem. But
mm,
there is still a lot of value in brand building the old world way. It's not even old world,
mm,
it's just eternal, basically.
yeah.
That's how it works. You build your
Mm,
brand instead of just selling products from point A to point B. Try that out. But for the new age brands, they can also continue doing digital stuff. So there is nothing as a don't do. One obvious don't do, which is basically based on common sense, not on advertising and marketing, is don't reinforce negative perceptions. As much as
yeah.
possible, use positive perceptions and reinforce them because the negative won't work at all. Of course, there are some industries like insurance which sell fear.
Yeah.
It's not just insurance. Even Apple was selling fear very recently when they launched their phone watch recently,
Yeah.
and they
The car.
categorically and
Yeah.
specifically, yeah, they were actually selling fear, saying if you don't, I mean, the implication was if you don't have an Apple Watch, if you are in a danger, we
Mm,
won't be able to save you. So that is really, really selling fear, actually. In fact, even the
yeah.
iPhone, which makes a
Yeah.
satellite call, they actually sold
Yeah.
fear in that. I was very surprised by that
Yeah.
because generally insurance companies sell fear.
Yeah.
So I mean, like, consumer electronic brands don't sell fear as much as what Apple did recently. I was quite surprised by
I
that.
feel that a lot of these brands like Apple, Amazon, etc., are really moving into the health and health space
Yeah,
in a very interesting, different way. All of them, and I feel that's actually one space I'm looking at saying, okay, if they're going to come in, they're going to come in with all that
yeah,
money. You're going to see
yeah,
massive amount of disruption there for sure. Uh,
yeah.
Actually, I have to ask you this question: considering the amount of stuff you consume around this space, what do you do when you say, okay, I've enough of me looking at what's happening in the communications, advertising, marketing landscape, personal branding, everything else? What do you kind of consume to get away from all of this?
I watch Malayalam films on OTT. They probably make the
Nice.
best, most useful, interesting movies across any industry in India. Of course, there are good movies in Tamil, Telugu, Hindi, English, etc.
Mm,
But Malayalam movies seem to pick topics that
mm,
no other industry picks. I mean, the last one that I saw thoroughly liked was that Nyandan Case Kudu, which means
mm,
sue me basically, where a
mm,
small time thief sues a big minister because of a
mm.
pothole on the road. You won't find
Nice.
this kind of a story in any language except probably Bengali, but I don't think they are interested in making such movies anymore at all. It's just Malayalam, they do
Mm,
that. It is
mm,
thoroughly engrossing. There are no unnecessary songs. Even the songs are very, very structurally important for the narrative. They don't waste time at all. They go straight into the plot. No slow motion, nothing. And the slow motion is a big problem in all the hero oriented movies in Hindi, Telugu, and Tamil. You need to showcase the hero coming slow moving and action, everything. Nothing happens like that at all in Malayalam movies. They just pick the focus, and that's what I generally do. Or I listen to audiobooks actually. Those are the only two things.
anything you've I mean, you suggested a movie just now, but anything else, beyond watching, anything which you've read or listened to recently that you recommend as well?
Um, One thing which may be a language specific recommendation, because there is a new movie coming on the Cholas, which is
Mm.
made by Maniratnam. It's called
Yeah, yeah,
Ponniyin Selvan. It's a
yeah.
fascinating novel which was written in the
Mm,
60s and 70s in Tamil and pure Tamil. There are
mm,
English versions available also on audiobook
mm,
format and online format and e format. I would highly
mm,
recommend pick that book and try to read that book, because the Cholas were literally the heights of civilization in India at the time. They were literally the heights
mm,
of civilization. They were really far beyond any other period. I mean, any other kingdom or I mean like big civilization at the time in India at the time.
mm.
It is fascinating. So it actually blends real life from I mean like from the Chola history and story,
Nice.
both mixed together in a very impressive way. It is very contemporary also. You would be able to understand a lot of why those decisions are made, and even though it's a story. So I think if you
Nice.
read the story in English and then see the movie, you'd probably appreciate the grandeur and the nature of the story really well. It's available on Spotify as an English version, Tamil version, everything is
Nice.
available there. Yeah, it's very nice actually.
Awesome. I'm going to check that one out. And actually, I have a nice one to kind of close this episode off. You're saying, why do you feel, because it's more a newer thing, but it's become predominant, why do you feel the need for professionals to have personal branding will not die?
It'll never die at all. The one big thing is that we live in such a noisy world. You just open internet and it's full of noise, uh, and you need to find out who is doing what. It's very difficult
Mm,
because there is actually a concept of something like something called the Dunbar number, which says
mm.
that in one lifetime you can only know 150 people. I mean, even 150 sounds like a very tall
Yeah,
task.
there's a lot of
If
people.
you, I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, because I mean, I know some names. I have no clue where I worked with them or what I have done with them, or I can see the face, but I can't see the name. I can't remember the name. So you keep forgetting that. So that Dunbar number is your own knowledge of people is 150. It could be 100 or much lesser. But the total number of people who could know you as
Mm,
Karthik means this, Varun means this, is completely infinite. Because I mean, just look at stars and celebrities. We all know what kind of movies they've acted in, etc. We're not stars and celebrities, but at least at a bare minimum name association level, there has to be some
mm,
topics which has to be associated with you, with me, or with somebody. That is personal branding. It's not being an influencer having a rate card talking about big brands. That's not influencer, or that's not personal brand. Personal brand
yeah.
is if I tell I know Varun, somebody says, yeah, Varun, that guy who does this and this, that's personal brand. That recognition
Mm,
is important for anybody and everybody. This is also a personal reflection there, because most people who want to be on their own, I mean, like away
Mm.
from this full-time employment, I mean, like work in an office 9 to 5 and etc. They seem to think, to some extent, that's what they believe. They believe that their work as independent professionals or independent consultants would come
Mm.
from people they already know. This is
Yeah.
unfortunately not true, because the people that you know already, they can't be the only source of endless amount of work for you. They can probably help you kickstart by giving some work, but you can't keep going back to the same 150 people again and again and again in your network.
Yeah.
99% of the work would come from people who have no clue that you exist, but have
Mm.
found out that you exist and you are worth this, and you have no clue that they exist at all. It comes from
Mm.
strangers. This is true for me. When I quit in 2018, I thought it will come from people I know, but 99% of the work comes from people I have no clue that they exist. And they come and hear me. I mean, the best example, I don't know if I've told you this before. I did a big corporate workshop for a client, and the CEO, the lady, she asked me after the workshop when it went very well. She said, "Do you know how I found you, Karthik?" I said, "You must have read
Mm.
some LinkedIn post of mine or some blog post, or somebody might have recommended you." Yeah, of course, somebody recommended me. Do you know who recommended you? I had no clue. Some of your colleagues. She said, "My 16-year-old daughter follows you on Instagram. She keeps
Nice.
seeing that you write about personal brand, and she told me." That's how I came to
Mm.
you. So you never know who will remove that recommendation. That's personal
Exactly.
brand,
Yeah.
basically. Yeah,
Oh, that's a fabulous thought to kind of also kind of think about. It is that because you don't know who it is, you got to think about, and I also like looking into the data point of like who your actual end consumer is might not be who you
yeah.
think it is.
Not
Who
at
you
all.
might
So
find
it's
might be
like,
so
so it's
different.
basically both decision makers and decision influencers. Both
Yeah.
matter equally. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Karthik. As always, fabulous to talk to you. Can't wait to kind of get you back on the show. Maybe this time sooner. Not this long a gap between episodes in that sense of the word, but always a pleasure to talk to you and all the insights you kind of bring in there.
Absolutely. Wonderful, wonderful talking to you, Varun.
Thanks for coming on. Advertising is dead.